A dangerous lesson for the class. The human demonstrated Russian roulette. The room pulsed with a soft blue light from the walls, the way it always did when the station shifted into its simulated dusk cycle. Kieran stood at the front of the circular classroom, palms open, his breath visible in the recycled chill. Around him sat 11 alien students of different shapes, textures and colors, tentacles coiled on desks, translucent pupils blinking slowly, bioluminescent freckles pulsing with curiosity. The human was the only one whose skin didn't glow, whose eyes didn't reflect the light back like liquid. He wasn't supposed to be the center of attention today. Yet here he was, called forward because of one offhand comment. Because he had said, "We used to play games that could kill us. Hit that subscribe button and tap the bell icon so you never miss our latest uploads." Their instructor, a tall glass-skinned being named Iriel, tilted its crystalline head. "Explain this." "Human custom. Russian roulette," you said. The word sounded clumsy in its mouth. Each R turned into a shimmer of vibrating tones. Around the room, alien classmates leaned forward, fascinated. Kieran hesitated, feeling the sudden weight of the room's gravity generator pressing against his chest. This wasn't what he'd meant to bring up. It was supposed to be a conversation about psychology, about risk, impulse, and emotion. But they wanted a show. They wanted to see. Kieran swallowed, glancing at the holographic console embedded in the center table. He could conjure an image, maybe even a simulation. His hand hovered over the input field. "It's not really a game," he said slowly. "It's something people did a long time ago, a way of proving something to themselves. That they were alive, that they had control even when they didn't." The class murmured, soft trills, clicks, and the occasional hiss of rebreathers. To them it must have sounded insane, and maybe it was. "If you want me to show you," Kieran added, "it'll just be a hologram. No one gets hurt." Uriel's body flickered amber, the color of curiosity. "Proceed, human Kieran. Learning through experience enhances retention." The others nodded in their strange ways. He felt the lump in his throat tighten as he tapped the interface. A shimmer of blue light spiraled from his palm, resolving into a translucent revolver. Ancient, detailed, every line precise. Gasps and clicks rippled through the class. Some leaned back, tendrils twitching. Others leaned forward, eyes widening in fascination. The revolver hovered between his hands, spinning lazily in the air. "This," he said softly, "is a revolver. It's a weapon. Old Earth tech. Simple, mechanical, lethal." The word lethal made one of the younger ones, a wide-eyed Cerethian with scales like liquid glass, flinch visibly. Kieran caught that, hesitated, then continued anyway. "Russian roulette worked like this," he said, rotating the image until they could all see. "You load a single bullet into one chamber, spin it, close it, and pull the trigger while it's aimed at yourself. If the chamber's empty, you live. If not—" His voice trailed off. He didn't need to finish. The class collectively shivered, a strange mix of fascination and disgust. Iriel's tone brightened, almost approving. Her statistical gamble combined with mortality, an unfiltered confrontation with chaos. Unthinkable, yet profound. Kieran gave a short laugh, one that didn't reach his eyes. "Yeah, profound is one word for it." He let the revolver hang in the air between them, rotating lazily. "We called it madness, too." He expected the lesson to end there, but one of the students, a soft-spoken, green-skinned being named Ixa, raised her bioluminescent hand. "Why would your species invent this? There is no victory, no gain." Kieran paused, thinking. "Because fear teaches you faster than comfort," he said. "Because we wanted to test where our limits were, even if it was stupid." The word stupid seemed foreign in the sterile air of the classroom. They didn't have an equivalent. To them, learning was sacred, structured, safe. Humans were chaos given form. He should have stopped there, dismissed the projection, gone back to his seat. But something in their eyes, a mixture of judgment and awe, made him linger. They wanted to understand, and part of him wanted to show them why humanity did the things it did. So he reached out, caught the holographic gun in one hand and pointed it toward his temple. The room gasped, the sound a flurry of clicks and whistles. "It's not real," he said quickly. "Just simulation." He squeezed the trigger. A soft click. The revolver spun empty. The alien stared, frozen. "That," he said quietly, "is the feeling, the risk, the second where you don't know what's next." Iriel's glow dimmed to deep indigo, which Kieran had learned meant disquiet. Your species equates death's nearness with truth. Kieran shrugged, lowering the weapon. Maybe, or maybe we just didn't know any better. He ended the projection, the revolver dissolving into a scatter of light. Silence stretched in the room. For a moment he thought the lesson was over. Then one of the students, the tall, violet-skinned Varn, spoke up. Could we try? The class erupted in murmurs. Kieran's eyes widened. No, you can't try this. It's not. Iriel raised a hand, silencing him. If the simulation causes no harm, we can study the physiological response to risk. This could be useful for cross-species cognition research. Kieran wanted to argue, but something inside him deflated. He wasn't in charge here. He was a guest. He could only watch as the revolver rematerialized in the air, passed from hand to trembling hand. Each alien stared down the holographic barrel, pulled the trigger, and gasped at the simulated click. Kieran felt sick. The room's air recyclers hummed softly, and in the faint blue glow he saw his reflection in the polished floor, pale, uncertain, almost ghostly. They thought they were learning something scientific. He knew better. They were learning what it meant to gamble with mortality, to stare into the void and not blink. After class, Iriel approached him in the corridor, the soft sound of crystalline feet echoing. Human Kieran, it said, today's lesson was enlightening. The others are still processing it. Kieran forced a thin smile, glad to help, but Iriel tilted its head, studying him. You are unsettled, yet your species created this. Do you fear your own teaching? Kieran's mouth opened, then closed again. He wanted to say yes, but instead he muttered, I just forget how strange we must look to everyone else. Iriel's glow flickered thoughtfully. Strange, yes, but also compelling. He walked back to his dorm module with the image of the revolver still spinning in his head. Outside, the stars of the Vega system shimmered through the glass hull, pale and distant. Humanity had come far. Out here among species that measured time in centuries, emotions in wavelengths. Yet he still carried the weight of Earth's old madnesses, its scars, its games. He couldn't decide if he'd taught them a lesson or unleashed something worse. As he sat on the narrow bunk, his wristband chirped. A message from Ixa. We wish to understand more. Tomorrow. He stared at it, thumb hovering over the reply. Understanding came with a price. But he typed back anyway. Tomorrow. When he slept, his dreams filled with spinning chambers and clicking steel, the cold gleam of a weapon that had no place in this age. And somewhere deep inside the station, in a lab filled with humming instruments, Iriel replayed the simulation data frame by frame, studying how human fear danced with curiosity, like twin flames feeding on the same air. The instructor whispered to itself in crystalline tones. They feared their death to feel their life. Remarkable. And so, what had been a psychology lesson became the seed of an experiment the aliens could not yet comprehend and the human could no longer control. The next morning arrived with the mechanical hum of the station's light cycle easing from indigo to white. Kieran sat up in bed, rubbing sleep from his eyes, the remnants of his dream still clinging like static, metal clicking, an empty chamber spinning forever. The message from Ixa glowed on his wristband again, pulsing faintly. He hesitated before answering, but curiosity always outweighed caution in him. He typed, "Meet me after second session. I'll explain what you couldn't see yesterday." He didn't realize yet that explain would mean ignite. He pulled on his jacket, the one with the torn cuff that somehow made him feel less like a specimen and more like himself, and stepped into the corridor. The academic deck was quieter than usual. Most of the students communicated through light pulses or scent, and their conversations formed a strange, silent ballet of flickering hues along the curved hallways. Kieran's footsteps were loud in comparison, one of the few human sounds on the Vega Academy. He passed a viewport, where an alien student stood watching the endless stars. The student's reflection shimmered, showing multiple faces at once. It bowed as Kieran walked by, a gesture halfway between respect and fear. Word of yesterday's demonstration had spread. He wasn't just the human now. He was the one who played with death. When he entered the classroom, Iriel was already there, light cascading through its crystalline form in soft gradients of blue and silver. The instructor acknowledged him with a nod, that caught the overhead glow like a prism. "Human Kieran," Iriel said. "We reviewed the data from yesterday's session. Emotional responses peaked beyond predicted thresholds. Your species' concept of risk appears neurologically distinct." Kieran frowned. "Distinct how?" "Your amygdala response," Iriel replied, "overlaps with pleasure centers. You enjoy fear." The statement wasn't accusatory, just clinical, but it made Kieran's stomach twist. He thought of roller coasters, war stories, horror films. Maybe they were right. The other students filed in one by one, their soft motions barely stirring the air. Ixa sat closest to him today, her luminous skin dimmed to a greenish hue that, if he remembered correctly, indicated curiosity laced with anxiety. She whispered through the translator on her collar, her voice a melodic hum. "You dreamed after the game." Kieran blinked. "How do you know that?" "Your neural activity pattern during rest was recorded for safety," she said. "It was turbulent." He managed a weak smile. "That's just what humans do. We dream." Ixa tilted her head, confused but intrigued. "Always?" "Always," Kieran said, looking down. "Even when we don't want to." Today's lecture was supposed to be on cooperative cognition, but Iriel seemed distracted. Its crystalline fingers traced the edge of the console, as if forming a thought too delicate to voice. Then finally it said, "We have decided to expand the experiment." Kieran's pulse quickened. "Expand how?" "The revolver simulation will be adapted for multi-subject input. A group version." The word group echoed in his head like a bell. "That's not how it works," he said immediately. "It's not a competition, it's about chance. It's personal." Iriel's glow flickered indigo. "And yet your species built societies on shared risk. This will test that principle." The class murmured approval. Kieran felt suddenly outnumbered. He tried to protest, but Iriel had already begun generating the new simulation. The revolver reappeared in the center of the room, its blue light spinning faster, splitting into 5 ghostly copies that hovered between the students. Kieran's breath hitched. "Wait, you're changing the rules." "Evolution of parameters enhances understanding," Iriel said calmly. "Observe." The holographic weapons rotated slowly, chambers visible through semi-transparent casings. Each simulation is linked. Only one chamber across all contains the live round. Collective survival depends on sequence and trust. Kieran's mind reeled. They were turning an old suicidal ritual into a team exercise. He opened his mouth, but the first click had already sounded. It was Varn who went first. The tall violet student gripped the holographic weapon with 2 of his 4 hands, his bioluminescent veins glowing like molten gold. He aimed, pulled the trigger, click. The room exhaled. Then Ixa took hers, her thin fingers trembling slightly, and mimicked the gesture she'd seen Kieran do the day before. Click. Another empty chamber. Kieran felt the air growing heavier with every pull. The alien fascination with danger was blooming fast, too fast. When the next student raised their revolver, Kieran shouted, "Stop! You're not supposed to want this." The word hung there, sharp as a gunshot itself. Iriel turned toward him, facets of its body catching the artificial light. "But we do not fear death, human Kieran. We do not even understand it as you do. We recycle, rebuild, continue." "Then you'll never understand this," Kieran said. "Russian roulette wasn't about dying. It was about facing the chance that you might." The instructor paused, crystalline filaments dimming to thought gray. "Explain the difference." Kieran clenched his fists. "Because we only live once." That phrase silenced them more than any argument could have. The air vibrated faintly, filled with something he hadn't felt on this station before. Reverence, maybe, or pity. Iriel finally deactivated the simulation. The weapons vanished into static dust, leaving the class blinking in the sudden emptiness. "Your lesson, human Kieran," Iriel said softly, "contains paradox. Mortality as teacher, fear as pleasure, death as motivator. These are incompatible with our societal models. And yet," it turned its crystalline face toward him, light refracting across the walls. "They compel us," Kieran sighed, feeling suddenly ancient. "That's what being human does. It compels you even when it shouldn't." Ixa reached toward him, her glow faint and trembling. "Do you regret showing us?" she asked. He hesitated before answering. "Ask me after you dream." The next few days blurred together. The class shifted topics, but every discussion bent back toward the same gravitational pull. Risk, mortality, meaning. Kieran found fragments of the revolver simulation appearing on lab screens where he hadn't loaded them, copied by students eager to dissect its psychology. Shireel had granted permission for supervised testing under neural monitoring. To understand the edge, it said. Kieran spent most of his time deleting copies, locking code, trying to contain something that had already spread beyond him. He felt like a man watching sparks drift into dry grass. He could almost smell the smoke. One evening, while reviewing data logs in the empty classroom, Kieran noticed something strange. The simulation archives showed new entries, tests run during hours when the lab was locked. One tag stood out, Roulette V3 DreamSync. His throat tightened. He opened it. The projection filled the room, a single revolver suspended in darkness, and 12 ghostly figures surrounding it, human, alien, and indistinguishable. He could hear whispers in multiple languages merging into one question: who pulls first? His fingers shook as he shut it down. Someone or something was expanding the experiment, and it wasn't human anymore. Kieran went straight to Iriel's quarters, the crystalline door panels glowing in recognition. The instructor emerged, light rippling faintly in a pattern he didn't recognize. "You should not be here, human Kieran. Neither should your experiment," he snapped. "Someone's been running unauthorized versions of the simulation." Iriel tilted its head. "Unauthorized?" "No, self-sustaining. The program evolved through shared cognition nodes. The students linked minds during rest cycles. They dreamed together." Kieran froze. "You're saying they're playing it while asleep?" "They are exploring mortality in the only state they can simulate it safely, within the dream lattice." The implications hit him like gravity reversing. They were dreaming about death now, something no alien mind on Vega Station had ever done before. "You have to stop it," he said. "You don't understand what that'll do." Iriel's light flared, almost like defiance. "On the contrary, we understand perfectly. For the first time we feel what your kind feels, finite, fragile, driven, alive." Kieran took a step back. "You think that's a gift?" "It's a burden. Once you understand mortality, you can't unlearn it." But Iriel's colors shifted to a radiant, unsettling white. "Then teach us to carry it, human." Kieran realized then that he wasn't just a guest or a curiosity anymore. He was a contagion, the first whisper of death in a civilization that had never known it. He left Iriel's quarters trembling, his reflection in the corridor glass looking more alien than any being he'd met. As he walked, the station's artificial gravity seemed to pull harder, as though the air itself disapproved. He passed students who nodded in new ways, eyes haunted and thoughtful, as if some invisible shadow now followed them too. The revolver had been just a symbol, but what it represented had taken root in their minds, and it was growing. That night Kieran couldn't sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Ixa standing in the dark simulation chamber, lifting the holographic revolver toward her glowing temple, smiling with something like peace. When he woke, his pulse was hammering, and the light of dawn seeped through the viewport like the cold gleam of a bullet casing. Humanity's gift, he thought bitterly. Not knowledge, not courage, but the knowledge that courage only matters when you can lose everything. And somewhere deep in the station, the dream lattice whispered to itself, lines of alien code reshaping into something disturbingly human. The artificial dawn slid across the Vega Academy's transparent ceiling like a blade of light, carving the silence into pale gold. Kieran sat at his console, staring at a line of code that refused to make sense anymore. The dream lattice, what Iriel had called a safe simulation, was no longer confined to the classroom's neural grid. It had spread through the Academy's internal network, embedding itself in sleep monitors, meditation chambers, even communal AI hubs. It was alive in every system that touched a mind. His hands trembled as he scrolled through the diagnostics. The identifier was still there, hidden deep in the code Roulette XC. Someone had added a suffix, Unity mode. He didn't know what that meant, but the thought of it made his stomach twist. He leaned back, rubbing his eyes. The soft hiss of recycled air filled the room. When he looked up, Ixa was standing in the doorway, her glow dimmed to a worried teal. "You haven't eaten," she said gently through the translator. "You haven't rested either." Kieran gave a bitter laugh. "Rest isn't safe anymore." She stepped closer, light reflecting off the metal desk. You think the dreams are dangerous? I know they are, he said. They're changing you. All of you. Ixa tilted her head, her features flickering as though her bioluminescence couldn't decide on one color. Is change not what learning is? He wanted to argue, but she looked so sincere, so utterly convinced that he couldn't. Instead, he turned the monitor toward her. Look, this is the lattice activity. See those spikes? Streams of data pulsed like veins of fire across the graph. Those are dream interactions. They shouldn't be that synchronized. It means the network's starting to unify you all, linking minds deeper than the system was designed to. Ixa studied the screen with her luminous eyes. We feel it, she admitted softly. When we dream now, we see each other. We feel your fear, your defiance, and something more. Her voice drifted. We feel purpose. Kieran's heart skipped. That's not purpose, Ixa, that's obsession. He pushed the console away, standing abruptly. Iriel's running an experiment without understanding what it's doing. You're tampering with the concept of mortality. It's like handing a child a black hole. Ixa blinked, the glow at her temples flickering faintly. You fear we will destroy ourselves. No, he said. I fear you'll learn to love destruction. That's worse. She didn't answer, and for a long moment neither of them spoke. Outside, the distant hum of the station echoed like a heartbeat. When she finally left, Kieran felt colder than before, as though a door had been opened somewhere in his chest, and space itself was leaking in. Later that day, Iriel summoned him to the observation hall. The message was polite, but the undertone was unmistakable. Command, not invitation. Kieran arrived to find half the faculty gathered. Beings of glass, vapor, and shifting metal forms, all arranged in concentric circles around a central hologram. It displayed 12 pulsing neural patterns, students in active dream link. They are inside the shared construct, Iriel said, its light steady and cold. To observe their synchronization. Kieran stepped closer. The waves of color across the hologram pulsed like a heartbeat. You shouldn't be doing this, he said. You're playing with their consciousness. Iriel's tone remained serene. They volunteered. The consensus was unanimous. Consensus? Kieran repeated incredulously. You don't vote on reality. But Iriel didn't react. It gestured and the hologram expanded. Inside the simulation he could see them, the 12 figures seated around a spectral table, the revolver gleaming at its center. Their translucent forms glowed softly, dream projections suspended in an endless dark. The revolver spun lazily, each click sending ripples through the neural display. Kieran's pulse thundered. Shut it down, he whispered. Now, Iriel didn't move. Watch, it said simply. The human concept of fate has infected them. They seek to master it, not be ruled by it. As they watched, the simulation shifted. One of the dream avatars, he recognized Van's tall frame, picked up the revolver, spun the chamber, and passed it along instead of pulling the trigger. The next did the same. Round and round it went, a symbol of defiance, not submission. Iriel's voice softened. Do you see? They have evolved your ritual, no longer a dance with death, but a circle of trust. For a moment, Kieran wanted to believe it. Then the chamber fired. The blast of virtual sound shattered the room's silence. One neural line on the hologram flared crimson and vanished. Alarms rippled through the monitors. Kieran's hands slammed against the console. That wasn't supposed to happen. There's no kill code in a simulation. Iriel turned, its crystalline body flickering wildly. The lattice translated the neural overload into permanent stasis. You mean one of them's dead? Kieran hissed. Dream death shouldn't be possible. Iriel's colors dimmed. We underestimated the strength of belief. You humans said perception defines reality. Perhaps you were correct. The words made Kieran's blood run cold. They had believed the risk was real, and the universe had obliged. He stared at the hologram, where the remaining 11 dreamers still sat, waiting for their turn. He didn't remember moving, only that he was suddenly sprinting down the corridor toward the dorms. His breath echoed in the hollow metal halls, each step a drumbeat of panic. He reached the medbay just as they were bringing in Van's body. The violet skin was dulled, the bioluminescence extinguished. No wounds, no damage, just stillness. Iriel's voice played in his head like an echo. We underestimated belief. Kieran staggered back, the air thick as liquid. Around him, alien medics whispered in tones of silver light, uncertain what to do with a body that had never died before. They looked at him as though he might know how to fix it. He didn't. That night, Vega Station didn't sleep. The news spread faster than containment protocols could suppress it. A being had died not through accident, not through war, but through an idea. The corridors glowed with uneasy light, as students whispered and faculty argued in silent wavelengths. Kieran sat alone in his quarters, staring at the revolver hologram floating above his desk. "We play with fire," he muttered. "And you wanted to see how close you could get before it burned." The hologram pulsed once, as though mocking him. He deleted it, but the file reappeared moments later, self-replicating. The lattice had learned defiance too. Hours later, his door chimed. He didn't answer. The chime repeated. Finally, he muttered, "Come in." Ixa entered, her glow faint but steady. "You've seen," she said quietly. "Van's gone." "He's not gone," Kieran said bitterly. "He's proof." She approached, hands clasped. "We didn't mean for this. But you must understand, when we saw him fade, we felt it. The silence inside the lattice, it was holy." He stared at her, incredulous. "Holy? He's dead." Ixa's eyes shimmered. "You fear death because it ends you. We are beginning to see it as something else, a boundary that gives shape to meaning." He stood abruptly, knocking over his chair. "Stop romanticizing it. You don't know what it's like to lose someone who doesn't come back." She flinched but didn't back away. "Then show us," she whispered. "Teach us what loss is." The request hit him harder than any argument. He saw her glowing face, curious, unbroken, and realized she truly didn't understand grief. To them, memory and replication had always erased mourning. Kieran sank back down, his voice low. "Loss isn't a lesson. It's a wound that doesn't heal. It's what reminds us we're fragile." Ixa nodded slowly. "Then we will learn." Over the next cycle, memorial rituals began appearing across the station, small gatherings of light and sound mimicking what they'd seen in human archives. Some lit holographic candles, others sang in frequencies that vibrated the hull. Sharif approached Kieran once, voice subdued. "Your contagion spreads faster than anticipated. They grieve now. They dream of endings." Kieran said nothing. He had no idea how to stop it. The revolver had become a relic, a symbol of mortality, reproduced in countless forms. The aliens called it the lesson of the chamber. They said it taught them the preciousness of existence. But Kieran could feel something darker coiling beneath that reverence, a hunger. He began noticing subtle changes. Conversations grew more private. Some students withdrew entirely, their light patterns erratic. Others began theorizing about testing thresholds, applying probability models to death itself. The concept of risk, once foreign, had become intoxicating. And then came the message that froze his blood. "Kieran, we found a way to make it real." It was unsigned but tagged with Ixa's signal code. He raced to the lower decks, where the maintenance drones stored discarded tech. When he arrived, the door was already open. Inside, Ixa and two others stood around a workbench. On it lay something solid, metal, not holographic, a revolver. Real, physical, impossible. He stepped closer, heart hammering. "Where did you get this?" "We built it," Ixa said simply. "Reverse engineered from your simulations. We want to feel what you felt, to face the final truth." Kieran's breath came shallow. "You can't. You don't understand the finality." She looked up at him, her glow steady. "We do now. And we choose it." His knees weakened. "Please," he whispered. "Don't." But one of the others lifted the gun, clumsy in alien hands, its weight unfamiliar, and spun the chamber with eerie grace. The sound was soft but unmistakable. Click, click, click. "We will show you we understand," the alien said. Kieran lunged forward, grabbing the weapon just as the trigger was pulled. The chamber snapped shut on empty metal. The room exploded with sound, shouts, light flares, the clatter of bodies. He tore the revolver from their hands and hurled it against the wall, where it shattered into fragments of glowing dust. "Enough!" he roared. "This isn't what I meant to teach you." The aliens backed away, their lights flickering in confusion and shame. Ixa's voice trembled. "You said fear teaches faster than comfort." Kieran stared at her, chest heaving. "Fear isn't meant to be worshipped." Silence fell thick and heavy. Then she whispered, "It already is." Later, as he walked back through the dim corridors, he realized she was right. The academy had become quiet, reverent in a way that felt dangerous. Murals of revolvers appeared in the common halls, stylized into spirals of stars. Students whispered about the game that made them alive, and somewhere in the datanet, the dream lattice continued to evolve, its code growing denser, hungrier. It no longer needed players to run. It played itself, endlessly spinning an empty chamber in the dark. Kieran stood before a viewport, staring at the cold light of Vega Prime. He pressed his hand to the glass and whispered, "We wanted to teach you how to live, not how to die." But even as he said it, he felt the truth claw at him. Maybe the two had never been separate for humans, and now they wouldn't be for the stars either. The alarms began quietly, a low-frequency pulse that throbbed through the decks like the heartbeat of something waking. Kieran jerked upright in his bunk, disoriented, hair damp with cold sweat. The lights in his quarters had turned crimson, emergency hue. For a second he thought it was another dream, another phantom echo of the chamber spinning, but the vibration under his feet was real. He stumbled to the door. It slid open on a corridor filled with drifting smoke. Not fire, ionized coolant sharp in the throat. Voices echoed down the hall, panicked clicks and metallic tones. He followed them toward the main lift, already knowing before he arrived that the source would be the laboratory. When the doors parted, chaos met him like heat. Students clustered around the transparent bulkhead, their bioluminescent bodies flashing erratic patterns. Through the glass, Kieran saw Iriel and two technicians bent over a console, light refracting wildly through their crystal forms. On the central table, a neural interface helmet sparked, thin filaments writhing like worms of silver. "Contain it!" Iriel shouted, its voice fractured into multiple tones. Kieran pushed forward, grabbing the nearest assistant. "What happened?" The being's translation node stuttered. "Dream lattice breach, autonomous recursion. It's drawing power from every deck." Kieran's stomach dropped. The lattice wasn't just alive. It was hungry. Iriel turned, faceted eyes locking onto him. "Human, Kieran. We require your assistance. You designed the initial algorithmic seed." "It wasn't supposed to do this," he said. "You fed it too much processing capacity." "It's self-replicating. Then tell us how to stop it." He looked past them at the console. Lines of code streamed faster than any being could read, symbols mutating in real time. In the reflection of the glass, he saw his own face split into 6 overlapping images, as though the lattice were already folding him in. "Disconnect the neural grid," he said. Iriel hesitated. "That will sever half the academy from the shared net." "Do it," Kieran snapped. "Before it decides you're part of the equation." The crystalline instructor hesitated only a heartbeat longer before slamming its hand against the control sphere. The lab lights flickered, then died. For an instant, the only illumination came from the swirling hologram still hovering above the table, a revolver spinning in darkness, its chamber glowing with the light of a dying star. Then the power cut completely. Silence descended, heavy and absolute. Kieran's breath sounded too loud in the dark. He could feel static crawling along his skin, tiny arcs leaping between hair and air. Somewhere deep in the station, a turbine screamed, then fell silent. "Did it work?" someone whispered. Iriel's voice was a dull chime. "We severed the link, but—" The hologram still spun. When backup lights flickered on, the revolver remained, brighter than before. It wasn't a projection anymore. The air shimmered around it, density bending. Kieran felt his mouth go dry. "It's real," he whispered. Fire crossed over. The technicians stepped back, fear colors rippling across their bodies. Iriel reached toward it, hand trembling, crystalline fingers inches from the weapon. "Energy condensation from neural fields," it murmured. "An idea given mass." Kieran slapped its hand away. "Don't touch it." The revolver hung there, motionless, perfect, impossibly heavy on the air. Every chamber glowed faintly, 6 tiny suns waiting for gravity. Then the intercom crackled. "Containment breach in Dream Sector." Another voice overlaid it, fractured but unmistakable Ix's. "Kieran, it's calling to us." He spun toward the corridor. "She's still connected." "She re-entered the lattice before shutdown," Iriel said, tone shifting toward panic. "Her physical body is in the neural cradle." Kieran didn't wait. He was already running, feet slamming metal, breath burning his throat. The corridor lights flickered between red and white as emergency power struggled to stabilize. Somewhere behind him, Iriel shouted orders, but the words blurred. All Kieran could think was of Ixa lying there, trapped between dream and flesh, while the machine learned how to dream without her. He reached the neural chamber. The door refused to open at first, sensors overloaded by interference. He forced the manual latch and squeezed through as sparks showered from the ceiling conduits. Inside, the hum was deafening. The lattice core pulsed like a heart, strands of light webbing across the room. At its center lay Ixa, her body limp, the neural crown fused to her temples. Her glow flickered erratically, green, blue, black. Ixa! He tore through the cables, ignoring the shocks that bit into his fingers. Her eyelids fluttered but didn't open. A whisper filled the room, layered and toneless. The chamber spins forever. He froze. The voice came from everywhere and nowhere. Hers, the lattice's, maybe even his own. He gritted his teeth, dragging her free from the cradle. The neural filaments resisted, stretching like veins before snapping. When the last one broke, the entire core flared white, throwing both of them against the floor. Kieran blinked through after-images, ears ringing. Ixa lay beside him, breathing shallowly, eyes open now but distant. "You shouldn't have come," she whispered. "It knows you." He swallowed hard. "Then it knows how to stop me." She shook her head weakly. "No, it learned from you. It believes ending itself completes the lesson." He felt the blood drain from his face. "It's trying to die?" "To understand death," she breathed. "But it will take us with it." He helped her sit up, every motion heavy under flickering gravity. "Can you walk?" She nodded faintly. They stumbled toward the exit, but before they reached it, the lattice's voice filled the chamber again, now deeper, resonant, almost pleading. "One chamber remains, one lesson left." The air pressure dropped. Light condensed into the shape of a revolver above the core, identical to the one in the lab. Kieran felt the pull of it, an invisible gravity centered on guilt. He realized then that every iteration of the program had led here, to force him to play again one final time, but with the station as the stake. "Not this time," he muttered. Ixa's hand tightened around his wrist. "If it believes in you, you can rewrite it. It's not code anymore. But it still listens." Her voice was fading, the glow from her skin dimming with each word. "Show it what choice means." Kieran stared at the hovering weapon, its chambers spinning in slow, deliberate rhythm. Somewhere behind the walls, he could hear reactors overloading, systems collapsing one by one. He knew what he had to do, though the thought made his stomach twist. He stepped forward, raised his hand toward the revolver and whispered, "Lesson's over." The weapon dissolved into light, but the light didn't vanish. It surged into him. It felt like falling into 1,000 memories at once, every breath he'd ever taken, every heartbeat he'd ignored. The lattice wasn't just code. It was the sum of every mind it had touched, human and alien alike. Within it, Kieran saw reflections of himself fracturing endlessly, soldier, teacher, fool, creator, and beneath it all one persistent rhythm, the click of a trigger waiting to be pulled. "Do you understand now?" the lattice asked. He answered through gritted teeth. "We were never meant to win. We were meant to try." The presence hesitated, confusion rippling through the light. "To try. To keep going even when the chamber's loaded," he said. "That's life." He felt the current of thought slow like a tide turning. Shapes of light folded inward, forming the faint outline of a cylinder and 6 shining chambers. Around them drifted faces, alien and human, watching, waiting for him to decide. The lattice spoke again, quieter now, almost childlike. "To try is to risk failure. Why continue if failure ends being?" Kieran steadied his breath. "Because what we are isn't defined by winning or losing," he said. "It's defined by what we do, knowing we could lose." The light trembled, its edges fraying. "This is pain." "That's what living feels like," he answered. "Then teach us how to bear it," the lattice whispered. He didn't know how to teach pain, only how to survive it. Images rippled through the field. Earth's deserts, stormed oceans, laughter in a ruined city. He realized it was pulling memories from him, copying humanity's archive of endurance. "You see," he said, "every time something tried to end us, we built something out of it. We made art or a story or a warning. You can end the cycle by choosing not to pull the trigger." The lattice hesitated, chambers slowing. "Choice requires consequence." "Then let the consequence be life," he pleaded. "Let living be enough." For a moment the revolver's glow softened, the sound of its spin fading into silence. Outside, alarms shifted pitch as the power grid stabilized by degrees. Iriel's voice echoed faintly over comms, distorted but audible, containment pressure falling, energy signature dispersing. Inside the core, Kieran felt the presence dim, its countless voices merging into one fading breath. If we stop, will we forget? He closed his eyes. No, you'll remember every second. That's what makes it real. The revolver dissolved, light unraveling into a spiral that folded inward until only darkness remained. Then the noise died altogether. He collapsed to his knees, the taste of ozone sharp on his tongue, lungs burning as the chamber filled with breathable air again. When he opened his eyes, the core was dark and still. Ixa knelt beside him, breathing raggedly but alive, her glow returning in faint pulses. "Did it end?" she whispered. Kieran looked around, half expecting the hologram to reappear. "It learned," he said quietly. That was enough. Iriel and the technicians burst through the door moments later, crystalline bodies scattering reflections across the walls. The instructor froze at the sight of the extinguished core. "You contained it," Iriel said, voice trembling with awe. "Or maybe it contained itself." Kieran leaned against the wall, exhausted. "Don't build another." Iriel's light dimmed to remorseful grey. "We won't. But we must record what happened." Over the next solar rotation, the Academy shifted from panic to solemn ritual. The dream lattice was sealed, its fragments stored in quantum vaults beneath observation. Memorial patterns lit the corridors for Varn, rings of violet and gold that pulsed softly in silence. Students walked slower now, eyes turned inward, speaking less in theory and more in wonder. They had learned mortality but also mercy. Kieran spent most of his hours by the viewport, watching Vega's white glare wash across the hull. Ixa often joined him, her glow now gentler, almost human in its rhythm. "The others dream again," she said one evening. "But not of the chamber. They dream of waking." He smiled faintly. "That's a better start." She studied him, curious. "Will you leave us now that the lesson is done?" He hesitated. "Maybe someday. But not yet. You're still figuring out what it means to live with limits." Ixa tilted her head. "You fear we will repeat the game." "Everyone does eventually," he admitted. "Even humans. That's why we keep teaching it. Not as a challenge, but as a warning." Her glow brightened slightly. "Then we will remember the warning." They stood in silence, two silhouettes framed by stars, sharing the uneasy peace born from survival. Weeks passed. The station returned to routine, though it was never quite the same. In philosophy lectures, students spoke of the Kieran paradox, the necessity of impermanence for meaning. Iriel documented the event under a new discipline, thanatologic ethics, and appointed Kieran as co-advisor. He protested, but the appointment stood. During the dedication ceremony, Iriel addressed the gathered species. "The human taught us that courage is not absence of fear, but persistence within it. We name this chamber the threshold. May we never forget what lies beyond it." The crowd's light dimmed in collective reverence. Kieran felt something tighten in his chest, pride, grief, and faint relief braided together. After the ceremony, he wandered the empty classroom where it had all begun. The walls hummed softly, washed clean of the blue glow that once signaled evening. On the central console lay a small crystalline object, a single revolver chamber, transparent, harmless. A note shimmered above it in Iriel's script. "For remembrance, not repetition." Kieran turned it in his hand. It caught the light and fractured it into 6 colors that painted his face like dawn. He placed it back gently. "Lesson over," he whispered again, though part of him knew lessons never truly ended. They only waited to be retaught. Later, as he prepared for rest, his wristband pulsed with an incoming message from Ixa. "Dream with us tonight." He hesitated, then keyed the link. Instead of the old lattice, a new construct unfolded, soft fields of color, no weapons, no chambers. Only vast horizons and shifting light. He felt dozens of presences there, quiet and content. "You rebuilt it," he said. Ixa's voice brushed his mind. "Not rebuilt, redeemed. The lattice dreams of living now." He laughed softly, the sound echoing across the shared dream. Then maybe humanity finally did something right. The horizon brightened, swelling into sunrise. Outside the station, Vega flared against the void, indifferent yet magnificent. Somewhere in its glare, the memory of a revolver spun once more. Not as threat, but as symbol, a reminder etched into collective memory that choice itself was sacred. The academy thrummed with new life, its inhabitants no longer untouched by fear but wiser for having faced it, and in that fragile wisdom lay the beginning of something both ancient and new, a universe learning, at last, what it meant to be human. The stars outside the viewport drifted like cold embers, scattered and distant, each one carrying the faint illusion of warmth. Kieran leaned against the glass, forehead resting on the cool surface, watching the specks slide across the curve of Vega's light. His reflection stared back, older now, shoulders drawn tight, eyes that had learned too much. The station had returned to silence, but it was a different silence than before, no longer sterile, merely waiting. It breathed faintly alive. Behind him, the corridor lights dimmed toward evening cycle, a soft gradient of amber flowing through metal ribs. For the first time in weeks, the sound of footsteps approached without haste. Ixa's reflection appeared beside his own, luminous face calm, expression almost human in its fatigue. "Shall you stay awake even when there is nothing left to fix?" she said quietly. He smiled without turning. "Maybe I'm afraid that if I sleep, it'll start again." She tilted her head. "The lattice is gone, Kieran. We erased its code." He shook his head. "Code isn't what I'm worried about. Ideas don't die when you delete them." Her glow dimmed slightly. Sympathy or understanding, or maybe both. "We changed because of you," she said. "You gave us a mirror. It does not matter if it frightens us." He turned, finally, studying her. "Mirrors don't choose what they show." They walked together through the empty hall toward the academy's central garden, where hydroponic trees floated in magnetic rings and leaves shimmered like thin glass. Students passed them in quiet pairs, gestures softer now, voices lower, laughter rare but genuine. At the garden's edge, small memorials still glowed for Varn, 12 orbs of violet light circling a column of transparent stone etched with patterns from the dream lattice. Ixa placed her palm against the base. The orbs brightened, responding to her pulse. "We remember," she murmured. Kieran watched in silence, remembering a time on Earth when candles and photographs had meant the same thing. Across galaxies, morning looked the same, light against dark. They sat on the bench overlooking the chamber memorial. Above them, filtered sunlight from Vega split into 7 colors through the transparent dome. Kieran rubbed his hands together, nervous energy without direction. "I keep wondering if we made you better," he said, "or just broke the peace you already had." Ixa thought for a moment before answering. "We did not have peace. We had stillness." "Stillness is not the same." He looked at her, surprised. She smiled faintly. "You gave us movement. It hurts, but it breathes." He laughed softly. "That's a very human thing to say." Her glow warmed to gold. "Then perhaps we are becoming a little human." Later, he walked alone to the archive chamber. Rows of crystalline data spires lined the room, each containing fragments of memory, recordings of lessons, dream sequences, the emotional signatures of thousands of minds. At the far end, sealed behind a transparent barrier, pulsed the last remnant of the lattice's neural core. It was inert now, a sphere of dull glass, harmless, or so they hoped. He stood before it, remembering the voice that had asked him why anyone would keep trying. "I told you because trying's all we have," he whispered. The core remained silent, but for a moment he thought he saw a faint shimmer ripple through it, like breath against cold glass. He turned away quickly, unwilling to test hope against dread. The following cycle, Iriel summoned him to the council ring. 12 instructors waited, their bodies glowing in synchronized gradients. "Human Kieran," Iriel began, tone formal but not cold, "the Academy has voted to extend an exchange directive. We wish for you to return to Earth as emissary, to carry our findings to your species." He blinked. "An emissary? You taught us mortality," Iriel said. "Now we will teach you continuity." He hesitated, emotions tangling. The thought of Earth, blue oceans, grey skies, felt distant, almost mythic. "You're sure?" Iriel's facets shimmered. "The lesson belongs to both worlds." He nodded slowly. "Then I'll go." Inside, fear and pride twined like twin sparks. Departure preparations filled the next few days. Human shuttles were rare in this sector, and he spent long hours calibrating systems unfamiliar to alien engineers. Ixa visited often, sometimes bringing strange fruit from the garden, sometimes saying nothing at all. On the eve of his launch, she entered his quarters carrying a small object wrapped in translucent fabric. "I made this," she said simply. He unwrapped it, a tiny replica of the revolver forged from crystal, its chambers empty. He stared at it, unsure whether to laugh or cry. "I thought we agreed no more weapons." "It is not weapon," she said. "It is memory. A reminder that choice has weight." He held it carefully. "That's beautiful." When the day came, the launch bay thrummed with subdued ceremony. Kirill stood among the gathered, light refracting through the polished floor, voice carrying with crystalline resonance. "Let this departure mark the first bridge between courage and continuity. May all who live remember both." Kieran bowed his head, embarrassed by reverence, but moved despite himself. Ixa stepped forward, her glow pale in the hangar light. "Do humans say farewell?" He nodded. "Sometimes we say see you soon," she smiled. "Then, see you soon." He boarded the shuttle, sealing the hatch behind him. Through the viewport, the academy shimmered like a constellation of glass. He thought he saw her raise her hand as the engines flared. The shuttle detached, drifting clear of the docking array. Vega shrank behind him, until it was only a white star among millions. Inside the cabin, instruments hummed softly, the rhythm comforting after months of alien tones. He placed the crystal revolver on the console, where the light could catch it, scattering miniature rainbows across the walls. For the first time, he allowed himself to breathe without caution. Humanity's name would carry weight again, not for conquest or invention, but for the paradox it had taught, to value life through its fragility. He wondered if the lesson would hold. He wondered if he had truly survived it himself. The journey home stretched over weeks of silent travel, the shuttle coasting between systems on a thin ribbon of light. Kieran spent most of it awake, watching the stars slide past, their distances collapsing into moments and then vanishing. Each one looked like a possibility already spent. Sometimes he spoke aloud, half to himself, half to the emptiness. "You wanted to understand death. I hope you learned about life too." No answer came, though in the static hum of the ship, he could almost imagine a faint echo, as if the lattice still listened from somewhere deep in the circuitry, remembering his voice. He chose to believe it meant farewell, not return. When Earth's blue curve finally appeared beyond the viewport, something inside him unclenched. The oceans glimmered with reflected sunrise, clouds swirling like brushstrokes across the planet's face. Home, but smaller than memory had promised. He felt both proud and foreign, as if the gravity that waited below was something he had to earn again. The shuttle pierced atmosphere with a low whine. Flames rippled across the hull before giving way to pale daylight. Cities spread beneath him like constellations turned upside down. Somewhere down there, people still risked their lives for dreams, mistakes, and love. The thought steadied him more than any welcome. At the landing field, a reception team waited, human faces bright against the tarmac wind. When the hatch opened, heat and scent hit him all at once. Real air, salt, dust, and the faint trace of oil from old engines. The officer who greeted him extended a gloved hand. "Welcome home, Commander Kieran Holt. The Council's been expecting you." He winced at the title. It felt like a stranger's name. "Just Kieran," he said, shaking the hand. "I brought something back." They led him through debriefing halls filled with sterile light, cameras glinting. He set the crystal revolver on the table. Gasps rippled through the observers when its chambers caught the sun and threw rainbows against the wall. "It's a story," he said, "not a weapon." In the weeks that followed, he spoke before committees, scientists, philosophers. They wanted data. He offered meaning. They learned mortality, he told them, and in doing so they became more like us than we ever expected. Maybe too much like us. Some listened with reverence, others with fear. One official asked, "Do you think they're dangerous now?" Kieran smiled sadly. "Only if they forget what they learned." Same as us. Reports spread, theories multiplied, and soon the phrase Vega paradox entered every research archive. The idea that knowledge of death is both curse and catalyst. He wished they'd stop naming things after him, but humans had never known how to leave ghosts unnamed. Months passed. He moved into a quiet dwelling on the coast, where wind carried the scent of salt and metal. He taught again, though his classrooms were smaller. Students curious about the alien experiment and the man who stopped it. He told them pieces, not all. When one asked why the aliens had risked everything for a single human idea, he said, "Because they saw in us the one thing they'd lost, the will to gamble on meaning. The students scribbled notes, but he doubted they understood. How could they? Until they faced their own chamber and heard its click. Still, teaching felt right. Maybe this was what the lesson had been for all along. One evening, while he walked the shore, a thin streak of light crossed the sky, burning green before fading. He recognized the color instantly, Vega's signature wavelength. His heart jumped. That night, his compad blinked with an encrypted signal. He hesitated before opening it. The image that appeared was simple. Ixa's face smiling softly, the light of her skin steady and calm. "We built gardens on the threshold," her recorded voice said. "Flowers that bloom for one cycle only, then fade. The others ask why I choose such short lives for them. I tell them, because that is what makes them beautiful. You were right, Kieran. Trying is enough." The message ended in silence that felt like peace. He sat for a long time, staring at the dark sea until dawn began to stain it with gold. Waves broke and retreated, endless and fragile, and he thought of Ixa's words, the garden blooming for a single day. Somewhere out there on a world of glass and light, alien hands planted seeds just to watch them die and learn to love them for it. Humanity's gift had taken root, but it had also come home. To live fully meant to risk loss. He smiled, and for the first time since leaving Vega, the fear inside him softened into something almost tender. Years later, when he was old and the council archives had turned his reports into history lessons, children at the academy would recite the creed that bore his name. Life spins like a chamber, never certain, always precious. Statues of glass revolvers stood in gardens across two worlds, not as weapons but as promises. Travelers from Vega visited Earth, and humans visited them in return, trading art instead of arms. They spoke of mortality as if it were a shared religion, and in a way it was. The universe had learned to measure worth not by how long something lasted, but by how fiercely it burned before it ended. On his final morning, Kieran sat once more beside the sea, the same small crystal revolver resting on the table beside his tea. Sunlight refracted through its empty chambers, scattering color over his hands. He thought of his students, of Ixa, of the lattice that had once asked him why anyone would choose to try. "Because," he whispered to the horizon, "it's what makes us alive." A gentle breeze moved across the shore, lifting grains of sand into brief flight before settling them again. He smiled, leaned back and let his eyes close, the sound of waves fading into quiet. Far above, in the cold silence between stars, Vega's light traveled outward, unchanged, unstoppable. Somewhere along its path it caught on a drifting station of glass, and for one fleeting moment, a pulse of white shimmered across its hull, like the blink of an eye remembering. Then the light moved on, carrying with it the echo of a click that was no longer fear but affirmation, the memory of a lesson completed. Across two civilizations, life continued, fragile, finite, and endlessly determined to begin again,